Good afternoon and welcome to IBA's daily news program. It's Sunday, January 3rd. I'm Ari O'Sullivan and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. The manhunt for the armed Israeli Arab terrorists allegedly responsible for Friday's shooting rampage in Tel Aviv, in which 2 Israelis were killed and 7 injured, entered its 3rd day today. Special forces expanded the search to other locations inside the central Dan region. IBA's Margot Dudkevich has this report.
In the aftermath of Friday's fatal terror attack in Tel Aviv, some residents opted to keep their children at home, and the city tried to cope with fears the armed terrorist was roaming free. Security around schools and kindergartens and populated areas in Tel Aviv was bolstered in the wake of the shooting attack on Dizengoff Street. This morning, the Tel Aviv municipality said school trips and activities would continue as scheduled, and schools in northern Tel Aviv opened at 10 in order to allow police to search the premises before pupils arrived. The 2 victims killed in the attack were named Alon Bakal, 26 of Carmiel, who was the manager of the pub where the shooting occurred, and Shimon Ruimi, 30 of Ofakim, who attended a birthday party at the pub. 2 of the 7 injured remain in serious condition. Security officials described the attacker, 31-year-old Nashat Milhem, of the northern village of Arara, armed and dangerous, and expressed fears he may try to take hostages. Some of his possessions were found in Tel Aviv, leading police to believe he may still be in the area. Many details concerning the investigation still remain under gag order. Milham's father contacted police and identified his son as the shooter after surveillance footage was made public. His father, who serves as a security guard and police volunteer, said his son had stolen his weapon. In the past, Nashat served a 4-year prison term for attempting to snatch a soldier's weapon. Police raided the family home and confiscated some of Nashat's possessions and arrested 2 of his brothers on suspicion of assisting in the attack. The remand of one of the brothers was extended by 5 days Saturday night in a closed-door hearing at a Haifa court. He has been described by some as mentally unstable and was reportedly known to take drugs and consume large amounts of alcohol. Some Israeli security officials said Nashat fits the profile of many lone wolf attackers and was not a known member of any terrorist organization. Mid-afternoon Friday, Nashat, wearing a backpack, was seen on surveillance footage casually walking along Dizengoff Street. He entered a nature products store opposite the pub. He wanted to buy cashews but found he did not have enough money and he returned them. At the store entrance, he casually took the weapon out of his backpack, which he left on a trolley, and began the shooting rampage. Police and the Shin Bet security service believe he was also linked to the killing of 42-year-old Ayman Shaban, a cab driver from Lod, whose body was found in a North Tel Aviv street shortly after the pub shooting. It appears there is no end in sight to the wave of terror hitting the country that entered its 110th day today, and there is growing frustration on how to deal with lone attackers who succeed in slipping under the radar. Margot Dudkevich, IBA News.
A short time ago, the 2 victims killed in the attack were laid to rest. 26-year-old Alon Bakal of Carmiel in the north was buried at his city's local cemetery. Bakal was one of the managers of the Sitma pub where the shooting took place, and he was a law student who had moved to Tel Aviv just several months ago. The second victim killed was identified as 30-year-old Shimon Ruimi of the southern town of Ofakim. Ruimi had arrived at the pub to celebrate a friend's birthday when he was shot. The third of 4 children, Ruimi was a civilian employee of the IDF. He was laid to rest at his hometown cemetery in Ofakim. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the site of the deadly shooting attack last night, where he lit a memorial candle and spoke to one of the pub's owners. Addressing reporters at the scene, Netanyahu condemned the attack, which he called a heinous murder, and vowed to dramatically increase police enforcement in Arab towns throughout the country. He stressed that security forces will have to root out pockets of lawlessness and incitement in Israel's Arab communities. Placing much blame on incitement in those areas, the Prime Minister said he was unwilling to have a separate state within the State of Israel, in which some citizens live in enclaves with no law enforcement, with Islamist incitement, and an abundance of illegal weapons that are frequently fired at festive events such as weddings. Netanyahu said he formulated a plan that will include building more police stations and recruit more police officers. He added that Israel would demand loyalty to the laws of the state from everyone, stressing that one cannot say, I am an Israeli in my rights and Palestinian in my duties. In other news, a female soldier was hit by sniper fire near the Cave of the Patriarchs in Hebron this afternoon. According to the security forces, shots were fired at the 20-year-old soldier from a distance, and security forces launched a manhunt to catch the perpetrator. Magen David paramedics who treated her said she was hit in her lower body, and her wounds were described as moderate. She was transported by ambulance to Shaare Zedek Hospital in Jerusalem. The Shin Bet and police have officially solved the Duma murder case, in which 3 members of the Duwabshe family were killed in an arson attack last July. Prosecutors today filed indictments against 2 Jewish suspects, one of whom is a minor. 21-year-old Amiram Ben Uliel from Jerusalem was charged with 3 counts of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder, 2 counts of arson, and 1 count of conspiring to commit a nationalistically motivated crime. A 17-year-old, who cannot be named since he is a minor, has been charged with accessory to murder. 3 others were also charged with racist attacks on Arab persons or property, including the torching of a church on Mount Zion. According to the charge sheet, Ben Uliel threw Molotov cocktails at the home of the Duwabshe family in the center of the Palestinian village of Duma, and spray-painted the words "Revenge" and "Long live the King Messiah" on the walls of another house. The arson killed 18-month-old Ali, and his parents Saad and Riham later died of their injuries. Ben Uliel then fled on foot. He reenacted the attack 2 weeks ago. The indictments culminate the intense investigation that has been carried out by the Shin Bet and police after the murders shocked the Israeli society and led to unprecedented measures against Jewish terror suspects. Much of the investigation has been under a gag order, and lawyers for the suspects have charged they were tortured. The indictment is not the end of the story, but the opening of a Pandora box for the Shin Bet, said Itamar Ben-Gvir, an attorney for several of the suspects. The suspects are part of a group of about 40 activists between the ages of 15 and 24 who are living on hilltop settlements in the West Bank. Israeli security officials and politicians have warned that dozens of far-right Orthodox extremists are seeking to overthrow the state of Israel and replace it with a religious monarchy. Despite what appear to be increasing tensions, the government has agreed to allocate some 15 billion shekels to Arab communities. The move aims to narrow gaps between Arabs and Jewish sectors and improve the Israeli-Arab standard of living. According to the plan approved by the government, investment will be boosted in education, infrastructure, culture, sports, and transportation in Arab areas that have long been neglected or are considered to be far from the same standards of Jewish citizens. Speaking at a special session on the issue that convened last week prior to Friday's deadly attack, Netanyahu said the plan assures that minorities, which include Muslims, Druze, Christians, and Circassians, will receive appropriate budgets and minimize the gaps between Jews and Arabs. Well, joining us now from our Haifa studio is Arab affairs expert Wadia Abu Nasser. Thanks for joining us, Wadia.
Good evening.
Well, the motives behind Friday's attack are still not confirmed, and authorities are still investigating whether it's nationalistically motivated, and have not ruled out maybe it's linked to Islamic State. What we do know is that it was allegedly carried out by an Israeli Arab, Nashat Milam. And do you feel this now puts the Arab community at the center of the blame for recent upsurge in violence?
Well, we have to highlight that Nashat Milham is one out of about 1.5 million Palestinian Israelis who are loyal to the state. And unfortunately, it happened, but the vast majority of people have not to be linked to this. As there are Jewish terrorists, there are some Arab terrorists, and I believe this should not be affecting the Arab-Jewish relationship. On the contrary, I believe that such an incident should instigate the government, should help the government to boost better relations between Arabs and Jews, instead of hearing some unaccepted statements by the Prime Minister regarding the Arab community in the country.
Well, are you witnessing any increase in incitement for the Israeli-Arab community during this current wave, as the Prime Minister has repeatedly claimed?
Well, there are impacts by different regional developments, especially the so-called Daesh and the instability in the various Arab countries around us. There are some impacts on the Arab community that one could not neglect. But on the other hand, one has to admit, and you in your reports mentioned the great gaps between Arabs and Jews in the country, and now they are talking about almost 70 years since the creation of the state, about still efforts to close the gap, but nobody is talking about the end of the gap, at least not in the foreseen future. I believe that the combination of these elements are affecting negatively and help creating some kind of fertile ground for further misunderstanding and sometimes even hatred between Arabs and Jews.
Well, do you agree with the Joint List leader, Ayman Odeh, who argues that the root of the problem is not the incitement, but Israel's occupation?
I believe it is both. No doubt that, again, at the end of the day, it is the Israeli government who is the parent of all citizens in Israel. And I believe that this parent is not doing sufficiently to its citizens, especially not to the Arab ones. Simultaneously, one could not neglect the fact that there are some radical elements in the Arab society. I believe that these guys are marginal, as they are in the Jewish society, are marginal. But fertile ground and lack of sufficient government treatment allow those to grow and to be more vocal.
Well, what do you make of the fact that almost a dozen of these perpetrators of these recent attacks were Israeli Arabs or carriers of blue identity cards?
Well, again, I tell you, there are some kind of exceptions in every society. There are criminals and terrorists almost in every nation. See what happened with Duma. Can we say that all Jews or all settlers are terrorists? The answer is no. There are always some exceptions, and we cannot generalize. I believe we have to treat things as they are without exaggeration and without generalization. On the contrary, I believe that now, especially amidst this wave of violence, it is the time to reflect on offering a comprehensive solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which would include also, or should include also, providing full equality to the Arab citizens in the country.
Well, we've just seen the government did approve a historic budget deal that allocates nearly 15 billion shekels to improve the Arab community and to narrow these gaps between the Arab and the Jewish citizens. Well, how is this being perceived now in the Arab community?
Well, there are different views, because according to different reports, including some institutions, the needs are, in order to close the gaps, are 42 billion shekels and not 15, which were allocated. And some people say that at the end of the day, only 10 billion will be allocated. In any case, in order not to go into numbers, I believe it is the problem is the strategy and the policy, not the figures. The vast majority of the Arabs believe that this is a good step in the right direction, but still a long way has to be gone together. Arabs and Jews, especially with a positive attitude by the government and not an inciting one.
Well, on that optimistic note, thank you so much, Wadia Abu Nasser, for joining IBA News.
Thank you.
Tragedy in the Negev town of Rahat. 3 infants, aged 1, 3, and 4, died overnight after a fire spread through their home. The 3 were sleeping at the time the blaze broke out and apparently suffered from smoke inhalation. Paramedics who arrived at the scene said they saw the 3 children lying unconscious. They were not breathing, had no pulse, and their faces were covered with soot. According to an initial investigation, the blaze was sparked by a malfunction in one of the home's radiators. The carnage on the nation's roads has taken the lives of a young couple and their 5-year-old daughter. The 3 were laid to rest today in their hometown of Lod after they were killed yesterday afternoon in a traffic accident near Or Yehuda. The family's vehicle collided head-on with another car that was traveling in the opposite direction. The driver and passenger of that vehicle, a father and his 4 children, were lightly injured. According to an initial investigation, the deadly collision was the result of human error. Apparently, one of the drivers had lost control of the vehicle, veered into traffic, and then crashed into the other vehicle. A Salafi terrorist group in Gaza affiliated with the Islamic State claimed responsibility for the rockets fired at southern Israel over the weekend. A volley of 5 rockets were fired, 2 exploded in open areas near Sderot, and 3 near the security fence inside the Gaza Strip. No damage or injuries were reported. The Air Force bombed terror targets affiliated with Hamas in Gaza in response to the rocket fire. A recently released poll by the Migdam Institute reveals that if elections were held today, the Likud would lose a 1/6 of its seats, falling from 30 to just 25, and that Prime Minister Netanyahu would likely fail to be able to form a coalition. However, the poll also found that Zionist Union under Isaac Herzog would also take a hit, dropping from 24 to just 18 seats. According to the survey, the big winners would be Yesh Atid, with results showing the party would significantly leap from its current 11 mandates to 18. And the Jewish Home Party, headed by Naftali Bennett, jumping from 8 to 12 seats. The poll also found that the situation would be worse for Likud if former Minister Gidon Sar returned to politics and joined Kulanu leader Moshe Kahlon. In that scenario, they would win 12 seats and Likud would lose 9. It's not all negative. There are some encouraging news. Here are a few things that may brighten up your day and even put a smile on your face. Gas prices went down by 21 agarot per liter. A new reform in public transportation fares begins. That means lower bus and trains fees. Police officers will receive a 1,500 shekels salary increase. Haifa launches a new plan to fight air pollution. And number 5, for those looking up in the sky, may have seen this, a colorful rainbow that sneaked in when the sun came out for several minutes in the Tel Aviv area. And also, IBA daily news broadcasts are returning. We're taking a look at the local finance, and with no currency trading on Sundays. The shekel remains the same, while share prices on the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange started off the trading week in the plus column. Here's a look at the mid-afternoon numbers. Turning to the weather, and the precipitous weekend left a fine dusting of snow across the northern Golan Heights. At the slopes of Mount Hermon, the ski cats were busy preparing for the opening of the season expected in the coming days. Looking at the forecast, and it calls for partly cloudy skies tomorrow and scattered showers, mainly in the north. And the temperatures will rise slightly. Here's a look at the expected highs and lows at home and abroad for the next 24 hours. Well, that brings us to the end of this broadcast of IBA News. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow when Laura Cornfield will be here to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. Same time, same channel. Till then, I'm Aryeh O'Sullivan wishing you a good evening and shalom from Jerusalem.